In recent weeks, America's economic landscape has been rocked by a series of dramatic events that have left many questioning not just the stability of their financial future, but also the clarity of the government's economic policies. The narrative unfolds with Fox News, once a trusted platform for millions of conservative viewers, now witnessing internal discord as even one of its most loyal hosts, Maria Bartiromo, has begun to openly challenge the administration's shifting explanations for the mounting economic crises. Just imagine sitting through what used to be a reassuring monologue, only to have it interrupted by a barrage of pointed questions that expose the inconsistencies behind the White House's reasoning. When press secretaries attempted to justify tariffs, Bartiromo's initially measured inquiries rapidly escalated from trade issues and allegations regarding fentanyl to hints of currency manipulation and even food testing phenomena. With each question, her frustration became palpable as she challenged the rationale behind why policies seem to change suit as often as a chameleon at a disco party. It's almost ironic how the same network that has long stood as a bastion of unified support now finds itself rattled by internal dissent, as loyal viewers begin to wonder whether these explanations represent a consistent long-term strategy or are merely spontaneous justifications for policies that are plunging retirement and investment values into peril. In a matter of just 30 days, the S&P 500 experienced a staggering drop of more than 7%, wiping an estimated $2.3 trillion off the market and shaking investors to their core, while the Dow Jones Index lost nearly 1,500 points in one of its most significant declines since early in the year. The shockwaves rippled far beyond Wall Street, where millions of Americans checking their 401k accounts discovered that their retirement funds had contracted by anywhere from 5% to 15% over just a few short weeks. Despite these alarming figures, the official narrative remained unchanged. The White House continued to maintain that tariffs were not a tax on the people, but instead a way to protect America from trade abuse. However, the reality for everyday consumers was starkly different, as the burden of these tariffs was swiftly passed on by importers to the price tags of daily necessities, resulting in a quiet but piercing increase in the cost of living. It is almost as if we are watching a carefully choreographed performance, only to realize that the dramatic pauses are simply masking an underlying truth. The economy is being steered in uncertain and increasingly perilous directions. At the heart of the rising uncertainty is not just the volatility of the market or the plummeting value of retirement accounts, but a profound sense of disillusionment that has taken root among both the viewers of conservative media and the broader public. This sense of betrayal deepened further when Maria Bartiromo, a name once synonymous with steadfast support of Trump's policies, found herself forced to confront a series of contradictory responses from the White House. In one moment, trade issues were cited, and in another, completely different matters such as the fentanyl crisis or even currency manipulation came into focus. The lack of a consistent explanation has sown confusion among businesses and everyday citizens alike, leaving many to ask, how can we plan for our future when the very policies meant to secure it seem to be in perpetual flux? And if you find yourself nodding along in recognition, consider subscribing and liking the video. Your support helps keep the conversation going, and we genuinely value your reaction and thoughts in the comments below. The tumult in the financial markets has not occurred in isolation. It forms just one element in a complex web of economic and political maneuvers that now extend from domestic boardrooms to international borders. The situation escalated when the United States government, on April 2nd, announced a series of unprecedented tariffs on Canada. Targeting steel, aluminum, and electricity exports, the Trump administration justified these tariffs by pointing to the country's role in the fentanyl crisis, a claim that did not even resonate with a DEA report, which failed to list Canada as a significant source of the synthetic opioid in question. In a retaliatory act that underscored the seriousness of the situation, Canada imposed tariffs of its own on a wide range of American products almost immediately after the U.S. announcement. Ontario Premier Doug Ford sought negotiations with Washington, all the while expressing cautious optimism about de-escalating these tensions. However, his hopes were dashed as the outcomes of these meetings left Canada still mired under the higher tariff regime imposed by the United States. The friction between the two neighbors escalated when Donald Trump made an eyebrow-raising remark that Canada, only works as a state, and that it was insane to even consider Canada operating independently. The audacity of the comments sparked an uproar, not just among Canadian politicians and citizens, but also sent shockwaves across global financial markets. Canadian officials and media outlets seized upon the statement, framing it as a blatant attempt to undermine national sovereignty and to coerce Canada into economic dependence on the United States. Prime Minister Mark Carney and Ontario Premier Doug Ford, among others, fired back against what they called a threat to Canadian independence. In a cascade of tit-for-tat tariff escalations, the Trump administration increased tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum to 50%, setting the stage for what many analysts feared could escalate into an all-out trade war between the two countries. As if this high-stakes international brinkmanship were not enough to rattle an already jittery global market, the situation took another dramatic turn when Donald Trump announced a potential military buildup in Greenland. In a surprising press conference, Trump revealed that the United States already maintained a military presence in Greenland and hinted at the possibility of augmenting troop numbers, an announcement that sent the Dow Jones tumbling by 540 points and nudged the S&P 500 close to correction territory. This unexpected pivot to a military strategy not only added to fears of an unnecessary and costly escalation in geopolitical tensions, but also revived a 2019 idea of purchasing Greenland, a concept that had been dismissed by Denmark in the past. Trump's audacious suggestion that Canada might also best function as an American state was met with considerable shock and sparked fierce reactions from international leaders, including Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte, who flatly rejected any notion of NATO involvement in such a plan. Greenlanders themselves were equally vehement in their opposition, with 85% of the surveyed population rejecting the idea of annexation. This flurry of dramatic announcements underscores a recurring theme. The line between strategic policy and reckless provocation has become increasingly blurred, leaving markets and citizens alike to wonder if the potent cocktail of shifting economic policies and grandiose geopolitical ambitions might usher in a period of unprecedented instability. In the midst of these international tensions and domestic market tremors, the U.S. economy faces a layered crisis that extends far beyond isolated market corrections. While inflation has shown signs of slowing, its continued instability is evident in the persistent rise of food prices, car insurance premiums, and electric bills, all of which contribute to a stagnant GDP growth that lags below 2%. Despite President Trump's optimistic reassertions that, if I didn't get elected, our country would be finished, the stark reality on the ground has left many Americans disillusioned. They are left to grapple with the reality of a weakening economy, a situation that not only undermines family budgets, but also casts a long shadow over long-term economic planning. In a particularly ironic twist, while top lines of political rhetoric boast of creating the strongest economy in the history of the world, the tangible evidence painted by rising living costs and persistent economic uncertainty tells a markedly different story. The unfolding debate over economic policy is further complicated by the broader political ramifications of these decisions. Amid talk of trade wars and shifting tariff policies, recent polls have revealed that President Trump's economic approval rating has dipped to 47%, a figure even lower than his levels recorded in 2017. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, political maneuvers continue to add fuel to the fire. At multiple town hall meetings, citizens have posed direct and pointed questions. Why are tax cuts seemingly designed to favor the rich, while critical social and health programs are being slashed? Why, even as living costs continue to soar, does federal support remain woefully inadequate? The national dialogue is rife with frustration as public officials, particularly within the Republican ranks, find themselves evading these sensitive queries. It is almost as if the administration is playing a high-stakes game of dodgeball, except in this case, the balls are hard-hitting questions about the economy, and the rules of the game keep changing unexpectedly. Moreover, the dissonance between optimistic governmental statements and the real-world impact of policies is starkly apparent across various sectors. A significant indicator of public sentiment is evident in the 54% of U.S. voters who believe the economy is headed in the wrong direction, an opinion that coincides with the financial sector's performance. which recently recorded its worst week in 2 years. As new tax policies take effect, there are rising controversies surrounding their impact on American businesses and households. The Treasury Department has indicated that these policies have caused raw material costs to spike by 15 to 25% across auto, electronics, and steel industries. While large corporations may have the latitude to pass these increased costs onto consumers, small businesses, numbering over 5,000 that have declared bankruptcy in the past 6 months, are less forgiving. One might quip that it's a bit like watching a luxury car slowly sputter on an endless road trip fueled by expensive fuel. If only the car came with a refund policy for poor planning. Adding another layer of complexity to this already precarious financial environment is the controversial immigration policy shift recently introduced by the administration. Invoking the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, a law that dates back over 200 years, the government has initiated measures to detain and deport undocumented immigrants alleged to have ties to Venezuelan gangs. Although 55% of Americans appear to support stricter border controls on paper, critics argue that these policies could lead to significant economic drawbacks. Industries such as agriculture, construction, and various service sectors, which rely heavily on undocumented workers, amounting to approximately 20% of the workforce in these areas, could face severe labor shortages if mass deportations are carried out. The ramifications of such a policy would likely extend far beyond the immediate effects on the affected communities, potentially shrinking the U.S. GDP by an estimated 1 to 2% over 3 years. With job security already under strain, many fear that the resulting higher labor costs could lead to even further economic stagnation, forcing businesses to cut costs in ways that might ultimately precipitate more layoffs. In this climate of profound economic uncertainty, investors are left with an unsettling question. What should be their next move? Major financial experts advise caution, suggesting that investors hold on to cash reserves and avoid major investments in the notoriously volatile technology and finance sectors. Instead, some recommend focusing on energy and defense stocks, which might stand to benefit from the current geopolitical tensions. The Federal Reserve is under increasing pressure to intervene by potentially cutting interest rates sooner than expected, an action that many believe could help stave off a deeper economic collapse. As the markets continue to react violently to each successive shock, from massive drops on Wall Street, where companies like Apple plunged 5.7%, Nvidia crashed by 6.1%, and JP Morgan tumbled 5.9%, to the unsettling prospect of a mild recession by late 2025, the need for a clear, coherent economic direction has never been more urgent. And just when you think the drama has reached its peak, a new twist was introduced with the U.S. administration's decision on March 10, 2025, to impose a staggering 50% tariff on all imports from Canada, with the controversial condition that Canada must become the 51st state of the United States to have the tariff removed. This revelation has sparked uproar across economic, political, and business communities, as Canada's role as America's top trade partner is thrown into stark relief. With total trade between the two nations hitting $793 billion in 2023, and Canada representing 14% of U.S. global trade, with 75% of its exports flowing directly into American markets, the potential fallout is both immense and far-reaching. It is almost as if a plot twist from a bad movie script has descended upon two of the world's most closely linked economies. One has to wonder, did the policymakers mix up their economic textbooks with a comedy script? As these retaliatory tariffs take hold, the effects are already being felt in multiple sectors. Oil and gas industries are on high alert since Canada supplies 50% of U.S. crude oil imports, while tariffs on aluminum and lumber, of which Canada provides 59% and 26% respectively, could lead to sharply rising costs for automobiles, homes, and everyday consumer goods. Experts estimate that this policy could drive U.S. inflation up by as much as 1.8% within 6 months, further exacerbating an already fragile economic environment. The interplay of these tariffs is predicted to disrupt supply chains significantly, as evidenced by recent declines in the stock prices of major corporations. CNBC's chief economist, Steve Lehman, lambasted the policy on live television, calling it insanity and arguing that such maneuvering only serves to undermine market confidence. It is hard not to see a touch of tragic comedy in this scenario. After all, if an economy were a finely tuned orchestra, these tariffs are like an unexpected kazoo solo interrupting a symphony. Public reaction to these policies has been mixed, if not polarized. On one hand, some Americans, already burdened by rising rent, soaring food prices, and escalating costs of living, with eggs, milk, and beef rising 8.5%, 7.2%, and 10.4% respectively over the past year, feel that any measure promising to protect domestic industries is a step in the right direction. On the other hand, a significant portion of voters, 54% according to recent surveys, remain deeply dissatisfied with the current state of affairs, arguing that these measures do little more than exacerbate an already dire economic reality. With the Dow Jones having recently plunged by 4.2% and the S&P 500 dropping by 3.8%, marking its biggest loss in 2 years, even stalwart financial institutions cannot ignore the mounting pressure. Major corporations, including Ford and General Motors, are now warning that persistent tariffs could cause new car prices to jump by $2,500 to $4,000, an outcome that would hurt consumer spending power and further sap economic confidence. In light of these turbulent developments, it becomes clear that larger forces are at work. The question now is whether this new phase of economic turbulence is merely a transitional hiccup or the harbinger of a prolonged downturn. While the Biden administration and other Democratic leaders have been quick to condemn Trump's unpredictable policies, many analysts caution that the repercussions of these trends could be felt well into the future, if not permanently. The specter of job losses, industry relocations, and a potential recession looms large over the nation, casting long shadows over what was once touted as the promise of making America great again. It's a complex, high-stakes drama where policy decisions are as volatile as the markets they seek to influence, and where every twist and turn raises the question, are these moves strategic recalibrations aimed at long-term stability, or reckless gambles that risk plunging the nation deeper into economic distress? As we navigate these uncertain times, the interconnectedness of economic policy, international relations, and domestic public opinion becomes even more evident. Each decision, from the imposition of tariffs on Canadian goods to the revival of debates over Greenland's future, carries consequences that extend far beyond boardroom strategies and political rhetoric. The market's reaction, witnessing over $1.4 trillion vanish from the stock market in mere hours following Trump's shocking announcement regarding Greenland, illustrates the potent impact that political statements can have on investor confidence in overall economic stability. Financial analysts now caution that if these unpredictable policies persist, the U.S. could conceivably face a mild recession by late 2025. The Federal Reserve may even be forced to intervene by cutting interest rates sooner than anticipated, a measure that could mitigate further decline, but also signal that the economic challenges are deeper than initially perceived. Amidst these swirling dynamics, it is essential to consider the human element. Beyond the statistics and market graphs lie the everyday Americans who are grappling with higher grocery bills, escalating rent, and an uncertain future. In major cities such as New York, Los Angeles, and Miami, where rents have surged by 12 to 18%, the economic hardship becomes not just a matter for stocks and bonds, but a pressing, tangible struggle for millions. The policy shifts, particularly in immigration and taxation, now have consequences that reverberate through local communities and individual lives. In a time when the economy might seem as unpredictable as a roll of dice at a carnival game, only without the fun of winning a prize, more than ever, it is critical for every viewer to stay informed and engaged in the unfolding debate. We encourage you to subscribe to our channel and join the lively discussion below. Your insights, likes, and comments provide invaluable support as we continue to explore these complex issues together. Do you believe these drastic policies will provide long-term stability, or are they setting the stage for further economic turmoil? Let us know what you think in the comments section. Your perspective is important in a conversation that affects us all. In sum, the past months have revealed a dramatic reorientation of economic strategy in the United States, one that is marked by both internal dissent within trusted media channels like Fox News and bold, often perplexing moves on the international stage. Whether facing the fallout of a $2.3 trillion market decline, grappling with the harsh realities of retaliatory tariffs on a key trade partner, or witnessing the resurgence of decades-old defensive legislation in the realm of immigration, the signs are unmistakable. The nation's economic trajectory is at a critical juncture. As debates rage over whether policies are meticulously planned or dangerously erratic, the future of America's economic strength remains uncertain. With each new policy announcement, every headline revealing market gyrations, and all the domino effects felt from local communities to global trading partners, the stakes have never been higher. Observers from every corner of the political and financial spectrum are watching with bated breath as the interplay between domestic missteps and international posturing continues to shape an environment of palpable uncertainty. In such tumultuous times, it is imperative for policymakers, industry leaders, and citizens alike to not only scrutinize official statements, but also to hold leaders accountable for decisions that affect the livelihoods of millions. If history has taught us anything, it is that amidst dramatic declarations and unpredictable strategies, careful and measured analysis becomes our most reliable guide. With a blend of caution, critical inquiry, and a touch of ironic humor at the expense of policy misfires, we must all stay vigilant as America navigates its way through one of the most challenging economic eras in recent memory.